Gentlemen, the ceremony is about to begin. Color guard.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, sir. That was Larry Wright. I apologize. Larry White with our national anthem. We now have Deputy Chief Kiakas for our invocation.
Let us pray. Almighty God, today we honor our veterans in your name. We thank you as we thank them for their sacrifice. We ask that you return to them the favor of your blessing, a gift we here on earth could not ever afford. We ask that you would give them a peace beyond the peace they fought for, to secure a peace in their hearts, wrapped in the joy of a life touched by your mighty hand. Bless the families of our veterans and our servicemen and women. Give them patience and wisdom and strength to endure God even every time things happen badly. Jesus said there is no greater love than that one should lay down its life for a friend. Today we pray for those men and women who have given their military service and their sacrifice, their time, their strength, their ambition, health, and even their lives on earth, and to the benefit of their brothers, unknown and known. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the United Veterans of Holyoke and the City of Holyoke, in concert with Veteran Services, I welcome you all to our Veterans Day ceremony. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize our dignitaries: State Representative Aaron Vega, Mayor Alex Morris, City Councilor Joe McGivern, City Councilor Peter Tallman, City Councilor Linda Vacan, City Councilor Rebecca Lisi. Oh, my apologies. All right. And the representative to Senator Humison, Mrs. Moriarty. Veterans Day. As we celebrate Veterans Day, I feel honored to be standing up here in front of so many people who are interested in honoring our veterans. It's wonderful to see the spirit of patriotism growing in our country. Once again, it is popular to publicly express the love for our great country. The patriotic spirit has spread to Americans of all ages. Children wear patriotic clothing, teenagers put flag bumper stickers on their cars, college students hang flags in their dorm room windows, and adults fly flags or place patriotic lawn ornaments in front of their homes. Recent events have made us realize that we have, as Americans, the freedom that we enjoy. Today, we recognize those who have protected and continue to protect our way of life. Originally called Armistice Day, this day was conceived as a tribute to the Americans who have sacrificed their lives in World War I. All right, at this time, I'm now going to call on our State Representative, Aaron Vega.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. So first, I want to thank all of you for being here, because in this day and age of social media and divisions and separations, it's so important to come together as a community, to come together as people who share the same values and the same beliefs. We may not agree 100% all the time, but when it comes to it, we care about our community, we care about our families, we care about our country, and we care about making sure that we're all safe and have those opportunities. So really, thank you for taking time out to come today. Next to our veterans and active service members, of course, thank you for what you do day in and day out and have done. And we often talk about protecting our liberties and our freedoms, and sometimes it says the disconnect as to what does that actually mean. And I just looked to this last week. This last week we had elections across this great country, and there was great turnout in many, many places. And again, not because we all agree, but because people are passionate about what they want to see this country do. But that right to vote in free elections is so important, and something that too often we still take for granted, and not everyone's engaged in that. But that ability to have those free elections, that anyone can run for office, that anyone can speak for the people that they represent, has allowed someone like myself to become state rep. Now, I had uncles and grandfathers and cousins that have served, but I give back and recognize the service and the sacrifices you have made, and especially here in Massachusetts, we ensure that our veterans are taken care of. With the Valor Acts 1 and 2, with the Stoller Valor Act, with making sure we have VSO officers throughout the Commonwealth, making sure that veterans, when they return, have access to job training if they need it, home buying programs, and educational pathways to get on with the next part of their life. So in Massachusetts, we recognize the sacrifices that not just the servicemen and women have done, but also their families. So thank you to all of you. And the last thing I'll say is, what I love about this event, particularly, of course, coming together and honoring our veterans and those that have served, but it's the award winners. And so the 3 award winners today, I think it's so great that we recognize not just the history of service in our community, through military service, but also the service that people provide day in and day out in our community. So to the 3 award winners, you're so important in the fabric of our community, just as our veterans, just as our history, and just as those new people that come in. And so taking time out on this important weekend and this important time to recognize those people that give back to our community throughout the year, throughout the day, even if they haven't actually put on a uniform, I think is really great. So on behalf of the State House, of course, we have citations when they come up, and on behalf of the State House and the House of Representatives here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, thank you to all of you for being here this morning.
State Representative Aaron Vega, thank you, sir. Next, I now call on our very own Mayor Alex Morris.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for your leadership of the Soldiers Memorial Commission here in the city of Holyoke, and thank you all for being here on this Saturday morning. I always appreciate the folks and residents and visitors that take the time to commemorate Veterans Day, also when we do the Memorial Day ceremonies in May, and I wish more residents and folks came out for events like this. So thank you again for taking the time. Before I begin, I do want to thank our Veteran Services Director, Jesus Pereira, for the work that he does each and every day on behalf of the veterans and residents of our city, as well as Deputy Director Wilfredo Melendez and the entire team in the Veterans Office in the city. In recent years, they've really expanded their services and have increased their partnerships with the VA in particular, that have really helped deliver for veterans in our community, to the point where not only veterans in Holyoke are coming to our VSO, but veterans really from across Western Massachusetts have looked towards the office in Holyoke and what we're doing and how to replicate those services and partnerships elsewhere across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I think it's a testament to Jesus' leadership. And so just join me in thanking Jesus and Wilfredo and the team there at the War Memorial. Also, again, I thank Chris. I want to thank, there's many members here of the War Memorial Commission as well that are volunteer positions that step up to make sure that we have those partnerships available at our War Memorial building, and making sure we better utilize the space there to support our veterans in our community. Just last week, we had partnered with the VA and VSO under Jesus' leadership to have a veterans job fair at the War Memorial. It was our second annual job fair, and it's part of our city's commitment to making sure that veterans of all ages, young veterans in particular that are oftentimes forgotten, that have the opportunities to come back and make sure that they can re-enter our community, secure housing and secure jobs, and us doing our part to make sure companies know that there's tax incentives and benefits to hiring veterans in our community. And so again, hats off to all of us and all the organizations that put that event together last week. And I also, as Representative Vega has done, is acknowledge the 3 award winners this morning. Of course, our Veteran of the Year, Rick Purcell, thank him. He's an active member of our community. He has been involved in activism, social justice issues in our city, in the area for many, many years. He's run for office before. He's also a volunteer on our Soldiers Memorial Commission, and he served our country in a really great way. And so Rick Purcell, congratulations to you on that honor, and we'll present the proclamations a little bit later when you get officially recognized. Also want to congratulate Colleen Chesmore for being Citizen of the Year, a resident of Holyoke that has continued to give back to our community. So congratulations, Colleen. And then last but not least, thank Emil Morales, police officer here in the city of Holyoke. Been an officer for many, many years. One of our most dedicated men in uniform in the department, and you've oftentimes probably seen him written about in the paper because he goes above and beyond, whether it's delivering a child while on duty, helping solve some of the toughest murder cases in our city, which fortunately don't happen too often, but when they do, we have officers like Emil that make sure we respond on scene and make sure everybody is as safe as possible. And so Emil, congratulations, thank you for being a really great representative of our community each and every day. And again, thank you to all of you who have served, those who will continue to serve, and I, of course, want to thank my partners in government on the City Council. Time and time again, we collaborate to make sure that we do our part to serve our veterans in our community. And whether that means expanding our tax work-off program for veterans, making sure veterans have access to that opportunity, making sure we continue to plan events that commemorate our veterans, be it POW events, the Honor and Remember flag raising at City Hall, we want to continue doing our part to make sure that our community members know about the contributions and sacrifices of our veterans. So again, thank you all for being here this morning, and enjoy the rest of the ceremony. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for that. Now at this time, on behalf of the Holyoke City Council, I now call on Councilor Mr. McGivern. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chris. Our City Council President, Tom McGee, is at a family commitment in Boston. He sends his regards and his apologies for not being here. He recognizes a very important day in the city of Holyoke to be present, and also a very important day to be the voice of the City Council, so he asked me to fill in. The importance of today I learned a long time ago from a wise old man is on Memorial Day we march. On Memorial Day remember the men and women who have made the ultimate sacrifice to protect our freedom, to protect this wonderful country that we live in. On Veterans Day, we remember the veterans that came home, who were overseas, who were participating in a war, who came home different than what they were when they left their homes, and different in good ways and sometimes in struggling ways. We have to remember that these veterans, our veterans who are with us today and veterans who participated in the war, are also ones who made a sacrifice for us, for our freedom. And we do so today, and I think we do so with high regard to understanding what this means to not just the men and women who fight in wars, but to their families and to all of us who are the benefits of the outcome of the actual battle itself. My father once said, all things never stay the same. And today it's a little bit different to be here in the Holyoke High Auditorium instead of in the War Memorial Building. It's a little bit different because for the first time in many years, our good chaplain, Ralph, is not participating in the benediction. And it's a little bit different because we are doing it on November 10th and not November 11th. But the message is still the same. The message is a very strong one that we recognize our veterans as a city. As city councilors, we recognize the importance of honoring veterans and being able to give them that recognition here today. We thank the Veterans Affairs Service and our officials in the city. We thank the United Veterans who are participating. We thank all the veterans of Holyoke for their participation in the armed forces and what they've done for us. We also recognize that veterans who today is your day take the time to recognize others. You have the Public Safety Award, you have the Citizenship Award, and of course the time to recognize one of your own with the Veterans of the Year Award. Public safety is very important to me because I work in the Holyoke District Court, which is one of two veterans courts in the entire Commonwealth. Every court in the entire Commonwealth acts under the Valor Act and recognizes that on a criminal basis, we need to take care of veterans who sometimes stray. And that's important because I think a lot of people don't realize that, and I think it's important that we offer those services and recognize the reasons sometimes for what happens that normally you would not expect to happen from certain individuals. Our courts are wonderful in terms of recognizing that and do a great job. And today I think the Public Safety Award is indicative of that to Officer Morales. Officer Morales, as a law enforcement officer, is out there protecting our backs on a daily basis. And I think the veterans recognize that, and we in law enforcement recognize that. Also, I think the Citizenship Award is a wonderful choice. This legendary city is made up of people from great families, great people, individuals who volunteer, and Colleen is one of those that understands the importance of volunteering. The Veteran of the Year Award is a unique award to the City Council because Rich Purcell, quite frankly, is one of our strongest critics. He's not afraid to tell us when we're doing something not wrong. He's not afraid to show us how to do the right thing, and he is certainly always paying attention to his Fifth Amendment, his Fourth Amendment rights itself. And what we recognize today, we're honoring Rich Purcell as the Veteran of the Year, and more important, he is being honored as a veteran. So on behalf of Todd McGee, the city councilors who are present, and those who could not be present today, we thank everyone for giving us the opportunity to be here, and we certainly appreciate all of our veterans.
Councilor Joe McGivern, thank you very much for that. All right. So before we proceed forward with the ceremony, there are some people in the audience that I would like to recognize. I'd like to recognize the Vice Chairman of the United Veterans of Holyoke, Art Geary, for his endless support and helping putting together this ceremony. I'd also like to thank both the Holyoke Police Department and the Holyoke Auxiliary Division for their endless support, especially Chief Dietrich. Also, I would like to welcome the Aviation Unit from the Massachusetts National Guard. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here. Okay. All right. At this time, we are now going to have a musical selection by our very own Holyoke Caledonian Pipe Band. Outstanding as always. At this time, I would like to call on Mr. Mike Moriarty for his presentation on First Lieutenant William Davitt.
I want to thank you all and thank the organizers for the opportunity to share this with you today. I don't speak as a representative of the Davitt family. I'm not related to them, and I don't speak in any capacity as a veteran, although I'm the grandson of a World War I veteran. I am not a veteran myself. But as a person who's very interested in the legacy and history of this city, I wanted to share what I think is a particularly poignant story of a man who lost his life in the First World War. November 18th, 2018 marks an important centennial in world history, especially for the United States and the city of Holyoke. European nations were permanently changed in the aftermath of the First World War, and the United States emerged as a leading world power. The city of Holyoke was at a high point economically, recognized as the world leader in paper manufacturing. Our population in the 1920 census, to be taken just a little over a year later, exceeded 60,000 people, its highest point ever and a third larger than it is today. A consolidation of the paper industry at the start of the 20th century resulted in more millionaires per capita than any other city in the country. From this prosperous city, Much was expected when the United States joined the Great War in April of 1917, and Holyoke more than answered the call. When you leave the auditorium today, you will notice two plaques that identify military servicemen killed in the First World War. One from the Highland School and the other from the original Holyoke High School up the street on Beach Street. That is not even a fraction of the number of people killed in the First World War from Holyoke. 18 months after we entered the war, 122 Holyoke servicemen were dead. No other conflict caused anything close to this much loss of life from our community in such a short time frame. Even before the U.S. entered the war, some Holyoke volunteers enlisted in Canadian, British, and French armed forces. But upon our entry, hundreds joined the U.S. Marines, Navy, and Army. Among the volunteers who left for training in the Army's Yankee Division was a son of Irish immigrants born in Holyoke and raised in Chicopee, Father William Davitt. Educated at Holy Cross College and in a Canadian seminary, Father Davitt was assigned to duties throughout Massachusetts, including Worcester, Chicopee, and Lenox. He was an accomplished athlete and a champion for at-risk youth. If you remember old movies with stars like Pat O'Brien and Bing Crosby, you know that priests were often portrayed in that time as very athletic, very strong leaders. Father Davitt, years before they were even talking movies, exemplified that kind of personality. He was the captain of the Holy Cross football team. He later went on to serve in many ministries throughout Massachusetts, including Worcester, Chicopee, and Lenox. He was the chaplain of a reform school in the Worcester area. In the military, he was commissioned as a lieutenant and served as a frontline chaplain in France. Lieutenant Davitt's service was exemplary. He earned the Croix de Guerre and the Distinguished Service Cross in the summer of 1918. Leading a rescue party, he went over the top of the trenches under heavy fire to assist 40 wounded U.S. soldiers who were trapped in a ravine. He brought them and the entire rescue party back safely to those trenches. He had also earned a Silver Star for his core work. As a frontline chaplain, he was responsible for the burial of the dead, and this was in a location where shells would be bursting overhead. It was extremely dangerous work, and he earned the Silver Star and numerous citations for leading burial parties under artillery fire. Lieutenant Davitt was the last American officer killed in World War II. After carrying a flag across a parade ground near the front on November 11th, 1918, 90 minutes before the fighting ended, a German shell exploded overhead, killing him. With his entire regiment attending, he was buried in France the next day. The story of Father Davitt's tragic death was well known 100 years ago. There was a commemorative plaque regarding him in the Massachusetts State House. Davitt Square in Worcester and Davitt Bridge in Chicopee honor him. A plaque detailing his life can be found at St. Anne's Church in Lenox. In the 1920s, his remains were removed from France and reinterred in Holyoke's Calvary Cemetery, marked with a fitting monument, and there will be a service recognizing him at 4 o'clock this afternoon at that monument. So Father Davitt's story began and ultimately ended in the city of Holyoke, and it is important on this centennial of the loss of his life that be recognized. This was once among the most famous of many hundreds of examples of loss and tragedy suffered by the people of Holyoke in World War I. There are other well-known stories of World War I, such as Chief Boatswain's mate John Mackenzie's heroics on the USS Rumlick, which earned him a Congressional Medal of Honor, and Belle Skinner's post-war work rebuilding a French village called Apremont. But a century later, most of the casualties are only remembered by their families, if at all. On this upcoming Veterans Day, the centennial of Father Davitt's death should be recognized and remembered, along with the loss of all World War I military and all lives lost in the service of our country, as Veterans Day and Memorial Day are both designed to do. A new opportunity to remember the military service of Holyoke residents was recently created through our Veterans Service Office. Through the Hometown Heroes banner program, families have sponsored banners on display near the Holyoke Soldiers Home. As the executive director of One Holyoke Community Development Corporation, I was able to sponsor a banner in Father and Lieutenant William Davitt's memories to help our community remember not only his story, but the impact of the First World War on our entire city. Holyoke has sacrificed too much in the Great War, and it should not be lost to the fog of history. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mike Moriarty. Last but certainly not least at all, our very, very special guest speaker is Sergeant Major retired Michael Finn, U.S. Army retired. Sergeant Major Mike Finn is a 23-year active retiree. Drafted in 1968, he served with the American Division and Charlie Company, 54th Infantry Regiment in Vietnam as a machine gunner and a platoon sergeant. After a short break in service, he returned to the Army and continued his career in the infantry, serving in the leadership positions up to and including First Sergeant with the 9th, 7th, and 8th Infantry Divisions, and as a security platoon leader in Germany with 2nd of the 4th Infantry Pershing Rifles. After attaining the rank of Sergeant Major while in the 8th Infantry Division, Sergeant Major Finn was reassigned with the U.S. Army Europe and became the Operations Sergeant Major for the 1st Infantry Division Forward. During Operation Desert Storm, he was reassigned as a Community Sergeant Major for the Gapingin community, where he oversaw the drawdown of the 1st Infantry Division in Gapingin. And as the 56th Field Artillery Brigade, Pershing again, in the, I'm probably gonna butcher this, Swashbesh Juman community, as a result of the SALT Treaty. Upon reassignment to the U.S. stateside, after a 5-year European tour, Sergeant Major Finn was assigned to the Bucknell University as chief instructor, where he oversaw the ROTC training program for Bucknell, Mansfield, and Bloomberg universities, along with 2 satellite locations, and as a junior ROTC program. For the entire time at Bucknell, he served as the 3rd Brigade Sergeant Major, State of Pennsylvania, 1st ROTC region, where he oversaw the training programs of all 23 colleges and universities in the state. He retired in January 1993 at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and was awarded the Legion of Merit, the 2nd highest peacetime award. And among his awards, Sergeant Major Finn has received the Combat Infantryman's Badge, Meritorious Service Medal with 4 Oak Leaf Clusters, and the LOM. He currently resides in Chicopee with his wife June, and is employed with the U.S. Census Bureau as a field representative for Hamden, Hampshire, and Berkshire County. Without further ado, my very dear friend, Sergeant Major Michael Finn.
Thank you, Chris. When Chris asked me to come here today, I thought about it and I said, okay, Chris, how long do you want me to speak? He says, speak as long as you want. I thought, I owe you better. I'll keep it short. One of my jobs is to actually keep you awake and not put you to sleep. Representative Vega, Mayor Morse, councilmen and women of Holyoke, citizens and friends of Holyoke, and veterans. Returning to this historical city with the involvement of the Holyoke Veterans Services and the combined military services is definitely a thought-provoking experience for me. I want to thank the Massachusetts Army National Guard for bringing in that UH-72. It's great. I want to thank the pipe band because your involvement here is super. Looking around, seeing active and reserve service members, the static display out there on Mackenzie Field, and actually being able to speak with those who serve or have served reminds me of the 23 years I served on active duty, how I helped shape the officers and enlisted personnel that I trained and served with. The flags and banners positioned around and the color guard's presentation fills me with pride and brings me back to when my unit, as part of 7th Corps in Europe, returned victorious from Desert Storm in the early 90s. Definitely a turning point in how our country viewed its returning warfighters. I was a product of the mindset of my countrymen back in 1969 when I returned from Vietnam. What a difference a generation makes. I thank you for inviting me to partake in your Veterans Day ceremony today. It's a wonderful day here on the Holyoke High School campus. Basically sunny. Hey, it's New England. You know, things change. Sunny, rainy, cloudy. But we'll get through it. But we're at peace and full of hope. I wonder, though, is it so wonderful and peaceful for the thousands of soldiers in the Middle East, for the sailors and Marines stationed in a carrier group off the Korean coast, or for the airmen or Coast Guard members patrolling the skies, borders, and waters, protecting our homeland? Think of it for a second. Remember the millions of servicemen and women who have served throughout the history of our great country and who are currently serving throughout the world, protecting our freedom and sustaining our way of life. You, your spouse, or a loved one may even be among those of whom I speak. And just for relative sake, how many here are veterans? Thank you all for your service. As you've heard before, Veterans Day originally proclaimed Armistice Day, November 11, 1918, which was the temporary cessation of hostilities between the Allied nations and Germany. The war to end all wars, World War I, went into effect at the 11th hour on the 11th day of the 11th month. In 1954, following World War II and the Korean War, it became a day to honor American veterans of all wars. Tomorrow is the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. Definitely a significant milestone. The purpose of Veterans Day now is to honor Americans' veterans for their patriotism, love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. That's why we're here today, to celebrate our freedom and honor those who helped make that happen. We don't have to look back far at all to realize that our world is changing day by day, and that the way our country interacts with others is influenced by many social and economic factors, as well as perceived intentions and demonstrated threats. The one constant in is the American serviceman and woman. They take the orders of those appointed above them and stand ready to defend our Constitution and protect our freedom. From the beginning of the 20th century to today, the role of the American serviceman has evolved from warfighter to peacemaker. We've conducted military operations to protect our homeland. We've mounted rescue efforts to protect our citizens and those of other countries from the effects of natural disasters and disease. We've served as liaisons for emerging countries struggling to determine their role in the world. And we do it all in the name of peace and goodwill. We know that this is a role not only for active military, but especially now for those who are members of the Reserves and National Guard. Look around. They're your neighbors, friends, family members, and co-workers. The face of the military has changed over the last 30 years. Our veterans are now recognized not only from active service, but more and more from Reserves and National Guard affiliations. Some have been deployed to the Middle East at least several times. Their jobs are at risk. Their families are left to fend for themselves, and their future is full of question marks. Many have returned scarred for life by combat casualties. For the Vietnam vet, there are still those who have never been thanked or even recognized. Some redeployed back to the U.S. in the middle of the night, afraid to admit their involvement in that conflict. They put their lives on the line and got nothing in return at the time except rebuke. That's the sentiment that prevailed in the country at that time. But we are so lucky in this country that we have our veterans. No matter what service they were or are in, no matter what period of time in our history, no matter whether they were peacetime, military, or combat veterans, I extend my hand and say thank you for your service. We all appreciate that show of respect and thanks. When I see the World War II guy with the hat, the Vietnam vet with the t-shirt, or today the decal citing affiliation with relatives in the service, I know. Talk to the veterans you know. Tell or show them that you appreciate their service. The city of Holyoke, as you've heard, has had its share of veterans and heroes. I thank the city for hosting us today. This weekend, it's our honor and privilege to recognize all our veterans. Happy Veterans Day.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant Major Michael Finn. At this time, I would like to read the proclamation for Veterans Day. Whereas, since the Commonwealth's colonial days, thousands of men and women have served our country in defense of freedom and liberty, and whereas on November 11th, 1918, the armistice was signed in the forest of Campagne by the Allied nations in Germany, ending World War I, the war to end all wars. After 4 years of conflict, and whereas since that day, every November, people from around the nation have gathered to honor our veterans. Whereas there are approximately 388,000 veterans living in Massachusetts, and whereas today, we are reminded of the great sacrifices and contributions of our veterans that have made to our country. And whereas we honor and salute those who've served our country throughout the generations with honor, patriotism, and courage. And whereas it is appropriate that all Massachusetts citizens remember the bravery of those who served their country so that their dedication and sacrifices serve as a reminder of the cost of our freedom. And whereas in November 2018, the world will commemorate the 100th anniversary of the armistice that ended the fighting in World War I at 11 a.m., November 11th, 1918, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. Now, therefore, Charles D. Baker, Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim November 11th, 2018 to be Veterans Day. All right. So before we go into our award portion of the ceremony, I would like to recognize two different groups of people. First, I'd like to recognize our past Veterans of the Year. If I could get you to stand up, gentlemen. Yep. All right. Who we have present is Officer Eric Martin, past state commander for the VFW of the Massachusetts, Tom Paul, and of course our very own Chief Ronald Dietrich. And if I left anybody out, my most humble apologies. All right. At this time, we're going to go into our awarding of the Citizen of the Year. Citizen of the Year is, of course, Colleen Cheshmore. Colleen Cheshmore was born and raised in Framingham, Massachusetts in 2001. She and her husband, Ned, moved to Holyoke where they are raising their 2 daughters, Courtney and Gracie. Colleen is a registered respiratory therapist of 32 years who has worked at Boston City Hospital, UMass Worcester, and presently is employed at Holyoke Medical Center and Western Mass Hospital. In her spare time, she enjoys spending time with her family, as well as giving back to the community that she has come to love. One of her most favorite organizations is volunteering time with the local veterans service groups, as well as a number of other community venues, to include Red Cross Volunteer Disaster Team, also teaches CPR for the American Heart Association, volunteers at Blessed Sacrament, and of course, the Holyoke Soldiers Home volunteer, which she is currently, she volunteers at. At this time, if I could call on both Mayor Morris and State Representative Aaron Vega for the presentation of the award.
We're a little ad hocing it up there, as you can tell. So, congratulations. We'd like to invite you to say a few words before we hit you with all this plaques and citations.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here today, especially my family and friends who came. My dad came from New York with my sister, and my cousin Joey and his family came from Medway, Mass. It's a great honor to be here today. I'm thrilled to receive this award. It means a lot. I want to thank Jesus Pereira and Chris for nominating me for this, and also like to congratulate Officer Morales and Veteran Purcell for their award also. I have a special place in my heart for veterans. My dad was in the Navy. I have a cousin in the Air Force, and I have a nephew in the Army. I lost 2 great uncles in World War II. Lenny died on Christmas Eve over the South Pacific, and John died in the second wave at Omaha. And it's your continuous service to this great nation that really inspires me to get out into my community, to work harder, to do more, to uphold my civic duties, and to stand up for the American values that you have fought so bravely for. And to that, I say thank you and happy Veterans Day.
Ladies and gentlemen, Citizen of the Year, Colleen Cheshmore. Okay. Our next awardee is our Public Safety of the Year. All right. For his first 4 years, Officer Morales served in the Patrol Division, followed by 4 years in the Detective Bureau. He is currently assigned to the Patrol Division, assigned to the 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. shift. Within the Patrol and Detective Bureau, Officer Morales has covered as a community police officer, the police liaison for the Elderly Crime Watch program, member of the Mass State Arson Investigation Squad, and an instructor for the Crisis Intervention Team in Human Trafficking. Officer Morales is currently serving as the union president for the Patrolmen's Union within the Holyoke Police Department. Throughout his 25-year career, Officer Morales has seen many highs and lows. Amongst the most memorable would be the murder of Officer John DiNapoli, which, because of his positive relationships within the community, Officer Morales was instrumental in locating the suspect and with him being brought to justice. The fire on 106 Northeast East Street, in which Officer Morales, sorry, kind of messing this up, was able to not drop a young girl and likely saved her life, Most recently this year, Officer Morales assisted the delivery of a baby in a city alleyway and marking the second time in his career where he delivered a baby. Officer Morales engages within the community on both off and on the job. While on duty, he sits on the board of directors at the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club, where he also coaches a basketball team, and he's done so for 4 years. At this time, if I could call Officer Morales' family to the stage, please. So, Officer Morales, on behalf of the United Veterans of Holyoke, we present this Public Safety Award for the year 2018. And also on behalf of City Council, Councilman Joe McGivern, to present the proclamation.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you your Public Safety of the Year for the year 2018, Officer Morales.
Wow, thank you. You didn't make this any easier by bringing them up here. I'm kidding. Thank you so much for being here today. Aaron Vega, Mayor Alex Morris, city officials, city councilors, you're the heart of the city, okay? I spent 25 years so far in the police department. My heart and soul is here in Holyoke, and I didn't prepare a speech for a reason, because I would need a 3-ring binder if I did, and I'm going to speak from the heart, okay? All my life in City Holyoke, 50 years. I want to thank my mom and dad for being here. Heart and soul of the family. My dad taught me one very important lesson. He always said family came first. And I learned that at age 18 really quick when I took the ASVAB test to get into the service and go to the Air Force. The day I was supposed to report to go, I got cold feet and I didn't go. I didn't go because I seen how my mom and dad were struggling. Dad spent nearly 40 years in these factories in Holyoke, working hard, 12, 16-hour days, and I seen that as a kid growing up. So I couldn't leave them. I have 2 kids. My son, who is currently in the Air Force, I got him involved to get into the Air Force. He's currently in South Carolina, in Shaw. And I have my daughter, who's with me here today, 16, and currently goes to this school. And the heart and soul, and also the rock of our families, my beautiful wife, Manira. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for recognizing me. Veteran Affairs, everybody. I'm very, very humbled to be here. It was a day that they do not teach you in the academy. I can honestly say. I do want to thank Action Ambulance, who was there, who also helped me and did what they had to do. But all the veterans, we're here because of you. We are here because every single veteran who risked his life and her life and gave their heart and soul to protect this country. Thank you so much, and God bless.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, our last but most certainly not least, I now present our Veteran of the Year, Rick Purcell. Real quick, Rick Purcell, he graduated Chicopee Comp in 1977. He enlisted in the U.S. Army in the Delayed Entry Program in 1976, which is before he actually graduated. Among his many accomplishments, he graduated from basic combat training in Fort Knox. He attended advanced individual training in Fort Benjamin, Harrison, Indiana, and he was assigned to the various duty stations to include 194th Armored Division out of Kentucky, 2nd ID out of Camp Casey, South Korea, and of course, Germany, out of the 2nd Aero Medical Evacuation Squadron. All right. Among his various ties to the community, he is the commander of American Legion Post 25. He sits on the Hampden County District 3, he sits as the Hampden County District 3 County Commander, and he's also the past chairman of the United Veterans of Holyoke. So again, without any further ado, I present to you Holyoke's 2018 Veteran of the Year, Rick Purcell. Sir, on behalf of the United Veterans of Holyoke, I present to you your plaque, Veteran of the Year. And Councilor Peter Tallman.
Thank you for your service. Thank you. God bless. Thank you.
I'll just be quick. I've only got 100 people to think, but I'll do it in groups. The first group is the veterans at Bay State Medical Center 6 years ago started a campaign to hire veterans with preference at Bay State. I'd like to thank the students of this high school for the last 20 years that have been coming to Forestdale Cemetery and helping me place 1,400 flags on the graves of veterans at Forestdale Cemetery and the teachers that come with them. There's a veterans kayak program that we have here in Holyoke at Holyoke Rose. I'd like to thank them, the veterans that come to that program and participate in. Please come. We just bought a brand new dragon boat. We need veterans to get on our dragon boat. One more group is the Soldiers Home. We do a bingo at the Holyoke Soldiers Home for the last 25 years. I want to thank the veterans for coming down and participating. And every dollar you give at our property drive in front of the store goes to help us with that bingo 4 times a year at the Holyoke Soldiers Home. So thank you very much. I'm honored and I'm humbled. And although I may not agree politically on a lot of things, with, like Joe McGivern said, but we do agree on veterans issues completely. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, your Veteran of the Year, Rick Purcell. And we are right on schedule. So at this time, I now call on current Commissioner Jim Hoare for our ringing of the bell. Commissioner. Now at this time, I call on Holyoke Caledonian Pipe Band for their final number. Color guard, please retire the colors. Deputy Chief, if you could, sir.
Almighty God, let every veteran of our nation's armed forces feel truly and appreciately honored by the attention and the appreciation of their fellow citizens of Holyoke. Let no one feel forgotten or neglected. Let every man and woman, young and old, feel the deep and enduring gratitude of our nation for its veterans and our active duty personnel. And as we leave here, Father, we ask you to hold our veterans and us in the palms of your mighty arms. Amen.
Commander Geary. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. We are experiencing some technical difficulties. Normally, we would play taps at this time. This now concludes our ceremony. Before we end, a couple announcements. Please join us on the field for our takeoff of the military helicopter. American Legion Post 351 will be having their annual luncheon, so please join us there at American Legion Post 351. And last but certainly not least, I'd like to wish the United States Marine Corps a very happy birthday on their anniversary. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. God bless.
To the veterans, tomorrow at United Congregational Church, they're going to have a meal there for veterans tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Also, next Sunday at Mountain View Baptist Church, who usually joins us at this ceremony, is having their annual Veterans Day ceremony, and they'll give us a free breakfast in the morning, a full breakfast, and that's at 9 o'clock of the flag raising and 10 o'clock breakfast and 11 o'clock mass. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we could have the Holy Calhoun Pipe Band play taps, that will conclude our ceremony. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That now concludes our ceremony.